Welcome to all my Dynasty Fantasy Football brothers and sisters. Dynasty 365 is back with another installment to satisfy your degenerate souls until the preseason routine start, which is right around the corner. In fact, it's only 22 days until the start of the Hall of Fame game, to be exact. So tonight, we're attending pep rallies. We're throwing the Frisbee out there on the quad. Rich has his hacky sack, and we're diving into the annals of colleges and universities in search of higher learning, though, on everything Devy Fantasy Football. Tonight, our special guest is the big man on campus, Chris Battistel. My D365 frat brothers in Jorge the Amore Edwards and Rich the Animal Sickles are joining me tonight. I'm your host, Chris Burns, and I'm ready to dive into tonight's episode. So, Jorge, I ask you, would you kindly treat that intro button like a keg and tap it? Let's go.
Chug, 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 chug.
Welcome to everybody that is tuning in on YouTube or listening to us via your podcast. We're so glad to have you. Jamie, good to see you as always, my friend. Tonight, I am really happy because tonight our guest, he hails all the way from, Canada. But this guy knows American football. And let's be honest, he is the coolest CB that's on the show tonight. He's a creator of content. He's an expert of eggnog, and he is a certified ball knower. You can find him right here after us on Fantasy and Frame Wednesdays, hosting Fourth and Frames. You know him. You love him. Welcome, Chris Big Maple Battistel to the show. Welcome, my friend. Chris, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing terrific. I got to say, I'm usually the one giving out those awesome intros, but getting one of those makes you feel so special, man. I appreciate that intro. It was electric. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on Dynasty 365 to talk one of my favorite types of fantasy football, and that's Devy Fantasy Football. I'm excited to be here, Chris.
I'm so glad to have you. I'm excited to learn about Devy and talk about it tonight also. With me, partners in crime, Jorge, Rich. Jorge, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm sorry I missed last week with you and Joey Roy, but I'm excited here. Big Maple, Chris Battistel. I like that.
What is that ring you got on, Jorge? What is that?
You
noticed
that
ring?
You noticed the ring. I didn't just put it across the screen for
just
no reason.
Scratch your ear casually while flexing this giant ring.
So I went to the Washington, D.C. Scott Fishbowl live draft, which, first of all, Joe Bond from Fantasy Six Pack and Jeff Lambert from Going for Two, they hosted it. They ran it. It was smoothly done. It was fantastic. Had a great time. And they had auctions. And so one of the things they were auctioning off was one of these rings from Trophy Smack where it says Scott Fishbowl on it. And so it is really like that. So definitely cool little gem here to commemorate the event. And yeah, man, it was a lot of fun. It's got some weight to it too. It's not just like it's pretty dense there.
It's for smacking
there's
people up right there.
Exactly. You're muted.
You're muted.
I didn't even do that. I guess they just Rich, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, man. This is like you were saying earlier. I'm really excited to get schooled here a little bit, get brought back to school. Learn a little something about some Devy here, and just having a good night. Happy to be here with y'all.
I love it. And Jamie, I see you said you donated those 2 Commanders jerseys. Did you donate them, or did you just get rid of them because you didn't want them around you? I'm just
hey, easy. So there was a McLaurin jersey and there was a Jaden Daniels jersey, and Jamie,
Ooh.
I'll tell you the donation for Jaden Daniels was it was high. So those 2 jerseys went to well-deserving individuals. So
nice.
That is awesome. everybody that is joining us tonight, remember to drop your comments, your questions, or whatever you might have for us. Nicknames, you can drop that in the chat. You can tweet us. We'll respond to you as we can. If you have any trade questions or anything like that in the show, throw those in as well. We have a great mind with us tonight. If you have any specific questions for Chris, be sure to drop that also. All right, guys, we're going to start with our first topic. We're going to get into the news and nugs of the week. One thing that we do know that's happened, Receiver, the documentary on Netflix, it premiered today where it's following Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, George Kittle.
He's a receiver.
He's
not a wide receiver, but he's a receiver.
Okay. Debo Samuel and the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Are we excited about this, Chris? Are you watching this?
Absolutely, man. I'm trying to take in all the football content that I can, and you're going to give me something reality TV. Quarterback was awesome. I enjoyed the quarterback series. You're going to give me the personalities of some of these wide receivers. I'm going to snatch it all. Even George Kittle is a terrific personality outside of football, even inside of football during his games. He's laughing. He's having a good time. So, yeah, man, I'm all about it. After this, after Fourth and Frames, I'm hopping right to Netflix and popping on Receiver, baby.
I love it. I love it. Rich, what about you? Does it get you excited?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's got my boy Justin Jefferson on there, so of course I got to watch it. But no, like Chris was saying, like I love George Kittle. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm excited to see a little bit of Amon-Ra St. Brown's personality, see what he's like, just because I've never really seen any of it. But George Kittle has, that man, he's got a personality. I love that guy, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Jorge, how are you feeling about it?
I'm loving it. And I'll triple what everybody's saying. George Kittle, big pro wrestling fan, and seeing as how Chris Battistel's here, and the WWE just had in Toronto one of their pay-per-views, Money in the Bank, this past Saturday. It's just an omen to just watch this thing and just pay homage to George Kittle and the rest of the receivers here in this group.
I love it.
Wait till they give me kicker, Chris. Give me kickers. Give me the kickers or punters or long snappers or placeholders. Give me that one, man. That one's gonna have the juice.
Now, I can't wait to see the one about disgruntled fans, where it's just, those franchises where they haven't won in 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And they're just pissed off. Like, follow me around during football season. And
that's called Twitter. That's called Twitter.
You're absolutely right. So, I know it's unpopular, but I didn't watch quarterback. I watched probably like 15 minutes of the first episode, and I was like, I got stuff to do. So, did I miss out a lot?
Yes.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I think the best part for me was Kirk Cousins got this custom-built house. He's got this custom-built trophy room, and the contractor, without Kirk Cousins knowing, went ahead and built a Lombardi Trophy spot for Kirk Cousins. So he's going to live in that house forever, never seeing a Lombardi Trophy in that Lombardi Trophy spot. And I absolutely loved it. That was my favorite part of the quarterback series.
Sorry, Rich.
That's too harsh. That's too harsh.
I'll have to go back and check that. But yeah, as we talked about earlier, we're ramping up the off-season programs, the preseason programs, are on the way. Off-season just finished, preseason's on its way. So we know that with the game being 3 weeks away, the Hall of Fame game, that is kicking off our, our football. We get to see live football happening against other teams. Sir. Are we excited? Are we paying much attention to what's happening in the preseason, or are we just let's see what happens? Jorge, how do you feel about it?
Oh, I like Chris, the other Chris B was saying, our guest for tonight, I want to take as much football information in as I can right now. With the shortened training camps, the information, I think previously when training camp was, 4 weeks and change, there was enough time where you didn't have to pay attention to the early camp news because you could wait a couple weeks before you started getting things that were more definitive. Now, because everything's shortened, now you really got to pay attention and glue yourself in because every single thing that you hear out there has some validity.
All right. Yeah. Chris.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah, I'm the same way. Training camp, Hall of Fame game, You're always going to want to try to accumulate information there. You don't want to overreact, because a couple years ago, we all overreacted to Josh Jacobs playing in the Hall of Fame game when Josh McDaniels was the new head coach. And then Josh Jacobs went on to finish as the running back one that year. So you don't want to overreact to any of the news. What you want to try to take away from training camps and these preseason games are these positional battles outside of the studs. So as a dynasty manager, you want to make sure that you have your ear to the ground. Make sure you're following Fantasy and Frames, Dynasty 365. You're following Chris Burns. You're following Rich Sickles. And you're following Jorge Edwards.
And you're absolutely following Chris Battistel as well. Rich, are you the type of person watching preseason games? Are you mad if Justin Jefferson is returning punts?
I mean, if Justin Jefferson is, I'm probably a little upset. Yeah, just because I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you putting him out there in that situation? Like, if anybody on the Vikings shouldn't even be playing in the preseason game, it's Justin Jefferson. But no, I'm really excited about the preseason games and stuff like that. I'm really excited, especially with Scott Fish Bowl going on right now and whatnot. I really am excited to see who's going to be returning punts, like you were just talking about, returning kicks, and seeing who I'm going to be targeting on that first waiver. I'm really into it this year. Like I'm into it just for the teams in general, but I'm actually paying attention to special teams this year too. So,
okay. And Rich, you mentioned something that I just kind of want to ask people, like, how do you all feel about it? So with the preseason now, it's short and everything, and we're just ready to get to real football. How do you guys feel about the studs playing in the preseason? Are you for it? Or are you against it? Do you want to see them, or you just want to see them on the game start on that Thursday?
Real quick, I appreciate having at least one game where you get to see all the starters going at it. I could understand if Justin Jefferson isn't going to start at all. It's kind of like Adrian Peterson treatment. Like there's just no need for it. He knew the game plan. You don't need to see it. So there's certain studs I don't think that you need to put out there, put in harm's way, but you definitely need to get your starters out there, shake that rust off, and let them get ready for the first games, the first season.
Chris, how do you feel about it? Play the starters, let them sit.
Play the starters, maybe a drive or two. I mean, outside of the sexy players like the wide receivers and the running backs, you maybe want to play those guys a drive or two in the third preseason game. Quarterbacks, maybe have them play a couple drives or a couple series in all the games to kind of shake up that rust, because we all see the first little bit of the NFL regular season gets a little sloppy because these guys are all just getting into motion. So maybe just getting their sea legs under them, getting them ready to go. I don't hate it. I just don't want to see it overdone like the Baltimore Ravens tend to do every year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't lose a lot of preseason games.
Yeah, well, exactly. Hardly any, and that's why.
Jorge, how do you feel about the studs playing in preseason?
I like the idea of quarterbacks and the offensive line being on the field most in terms of veterans, just because you want to see how both these positions go hand in hand. You would like to think that going against second stringers, that your starting offensive line can block those pass rushers, and the quarterback can find those receivers, just to build that chemistry and that confidence that both the quarterback has in the line. But I take the Jimmy Johnson, former Cowboys head coach approach to things, like, your stars are your stars. You treat them a little bit differently. This is the time to really figure out who these depth players are going to be and give them the opportunity, because at the end of the day, much like in fantasy football, you can get your studs the first couple of rounds, but it's who you're drafting in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds that really matter. And I think the same goes for real football.
I like it. I love it. All right, guys. So we are going to leave the news and nuggets, unless you guys know anything else, but we're going to move into the bread and butter of tonight's show. We're going to be talking Devy. Chris, when we were brainstorming and we came up with the idea for a Devy show, immediately the first thought that popped into mind was, oh, we got to talk to Chris Battistel, because this guy is a Devy guy. He knows it and everything. So just to set the tone for what we might be getting into for anybody out there listening or watching that is not familiar with Devy, Chris, what exactly is Devy football?
Devy Fantasy Football, Devy short form for developmental, created by the great Scott Fish. I believe he was the person who cultivated and curated the Devy Fantasy Football kind of game. And what it is essentially, it's Dynasty Fantasy Football. You have your Dynasty team, NFL style, regular with your parameters and settings, how you have it. And then you have your Devy roster, which is just like a farm roster from the college ranks. So as those players get drafted into the NFL, as long as you have them on your Devy roster, now that's a roster that doesn't accumulate points. It's just players that sit there on your player pool. Those players then get added to your NFL team. So say you drafted Caleb Williams when he was a freshman, when he went to OU, Oklahoma, and you sat on him for 4 years, or you sat on him for 3 years. As he got drafted into the NFL this year, he automatically gets put onto your roster. He doesn't get entered into a rookie draft or anything like that. So that's essentially what it is. It's Dynasty Fantasy Football with a developmental roster, a Devy roster, kind of like a farm roster.
Understood. Yeah.
So going off of that, actually, real quick. What's the draft like for Devy? Like picking up new players and stuff like that. What's that like? Like how many rounds?
So in your startup, you'll have your NFL draft. I mean, you can approach it any kind of way, but the easiest way, if you want to get into Devy, if you want to start a Devy league, have your startup draft, your dynasty draft. You can include rookies into that, or you can have a separate rookie draft. And then you can get into your separate Devy draft in that initial year, in that initial startup year. Try to make it small. If you're just getting into it, 3 to 5 rounds of a Devy draft is more than enough. Is that's all you need, because then in the next year, that incoming rookie class will be full of players that either got missed. You can have it where you also draft veterans, like just remaining free agents in that incoming draft, and then you can combine it, and you can also draft Devy players in that supplemental draft as well. So pretty much you're going to have your startup is your NFL dynasty draft, your rookie draft if the rookies aren't included in that initial startup, and then a 3 to 5 round college draft. Now, I tend not to, when I'm playing with people that are new to the format, I don't like them trading away those first year Devy picks, just so they can understand what the system is, what the value is of those players, because it does tend to get a little bit more trickier to rebuild in a Devy league over a regular dynasty league.
Interesting. Jorge.
Yeah, so Jamie has here in the chat like a college tax. What is that basically the gist of it there?
That's basically it. Yep.
Okay. So like the points, so the players on your Devy roster, they don't actually accumulate points. It's only once you put them in your active roster, your starting roster, or on the bench, that you actually get value for them. Okay. So you mentioned that there are 3 separate drafts potentially. You could have your rookie, you could have your startup, and then you could have your Devy. Okay. If that's year 1, does year 2 you just have one massive draft, or is it still broken down into, I guess, just your rookie and then your Devy draft after that?
I would say about 99% of the Devy leagues I'm in, it's a combined rookie and Devy draft. So it'll either be the incoming freshman class. So this year it would be the 2026 class, and rookies that slip through the cracks. So you're going to have, when your Devy pool is limited, when it's small, you're going to have a good amount of rookies that are going to slip through. Popular name this year, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels wasn't a highly drafted Devy target because no one knew that he was going to come up with this historic Heisman winning season this year based on what he did the year before that. Anthony Richardson's another guy that might have slipped through some cracks. Joe Burrow, when he transferred from Ohio State to LSU, was another guy that slipped through the cracks. And then you got your FCS guys, guys that come from schools that just aren't that big, smaller programs. Carson Wentz was one of the guys this year. There's not many this year. There's Ryan Flournoy, Isaiah Davis, I think, are the 2 popular ones. And then we have the Trey Lance boom from his time at North Dakota State as well. So you can do it where it's separate drafts, but just make the round smaller because the incoming player pool isn't as big on the rookie side. So maybe you have a 2-round rookie draft and a 2 or 3 round Devy draft if you want to separate it. But I tend to combine the two.
So I guess let me ask you another question. So Devy Fantasy Football, I hear that expression all the time, but then I hear about something called Campus to Canton. Are those the same thing, or is that take it to like another level? Like, how would you just differentiate Devy from something like that?
Campus to Canton takes it to another level because you're then playing in 2 separate leagues. So you're having your NFL league, and then you're going to have a college fantasy football league, which also that college squad also acts as a feeder to your NFL team. So anybody on your college squad that moves over to the NFL is going to be pushed through. So because it essentially works as 2 leagues, you don't want to draft a high amount of Devy players on your college roster at this point, because you still want to compete. If there's a prize, if there's money, anything on the college side, you still want to have a competitive advantage over there. So you don't want to just punt one league or the other. You want to make sure that you're competitive in both. I tend to maybe draft in a startup the first 5 to 10 rounds. Treat it like a Devy draft because you still want those high value targets. You still want to have a feeder system of NFL potential talent moving up to your NFL roster.
Gotcha.
That whole thing just blew my mind a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Like that's a whole other ball of wax. But
it's like a big Christmas present where there's multiple presents inside.
Right. Yeah.
It can get pretty extensive. I created a Campus to Canton Legacy League. There's 3 volumes of it, and what it is basically the first year is a giant 70-round college draft. There's no NFL side at all in the first year. And then you build your NFL squad as the years roll in. So year 1, your NFL starting roster is maybe just 5 flex guys because the amount of each team's going to have coming in. Each NFL team is not going to be able to field a full fantasy team, right? So that first year is crucial to the build for the next 3 years for your NFL team. So it's a lot of researching. It's a lot of diving into tape and just a lot of dart throws as well.
Okay. Well, Chris, let me ask you this. So, like, just based off what you're saying there, it's a 2-part question, really. Mm-hmm. So, does playing Devy lead you to watch more college football? And in doing that, does it make you a better dynasty player overall, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it'll make you watch. I don't know if Devy will make you watch more college football because you're kind of only targeting the well-known players. You want to hone in on the guys from the bigger programs. You don't want to get too cute with it and try to target the smaller school players that don't really, or programs that don't have high frequency of moving players up into the NFL and that have and those players having success at the next level, because ultimately you want players that are going to go to the NFL and accumulate fantasy points. So I don't know if Devy will make you watch the college game more. Maybe a college fantasy league or a C2C league might lend you to watch a little bit more of the college ball, because you have guys that are playing in the MAC. So you're watching Tuesday night, 10 p.m. football, waiting to see if your running back gets 30 touches just because of who he is, right? So if you play in CFF or C2C, that might lend you to watching more college fantasy. As for more college ball. As for making you a better dynasty player, I think as a whole it does, because in your dynasty leagues that are strictly dynasty, it makes you better at not reaching up for guys that are hype trains, because we see all the time CEH. I love CEH at LSU. I knew that CEH wasn't going to be a guy in the NFL. When he got drafted to Kansas City, everyone was like, CEH before Jonathan Taylor. And I knew watching Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin and watching CEH at LSU that it was always going to be Jonathan Taylor. So you do have the advantage there because you watch these guys a little bit, but playing Devy, playing Devy helps you in Dynasty football kind of find those later round gems.
All right. Hey, Chris, so a question from the chat from Jamie. He wants to know, besides yourself, of course, I added that, who are some of your favorite Devy analysts?
The Devy Royale guys are awesome. I think they are working with Fantrax now, so they're big. They got great information. The Devy Big Board, Brandon Lejeune and his team do a lot of great work. They dive into tape. They're doing mock drafts all the time. 2025 mock drafts with team destinations. Like they're really getting into the minutia of what these players can be at the next level. And then, of course, Campus to Canton, that whole crew, they cover everything from college fantasy football, Devy rankings, of course, Campus to Canton leagues, everything across the board. So those three are some of my go-tos when I'm trying to find some information on Devy football.
Nice. And another question for you from the chat. John wants to know, is Jermaine Burton the real deal, or should he trade high on him like during all the rookie buzz?
Trade high, baby.
You heard it here first. And I'm going to co-sign to what Chris said because, the way he said it, he had that Barry White smoothness. Trade high, baby. I'll say trade high.
You can trade high, man.
That's right. Nice. So actually, I had a question kind of going back a little bit, but how do you, and you kind of were talking about it a little bit, but Chris, how do you prioritize like who you're going to target when you're doing a startup of some kind? Like, are you worrying about like the age of the players? Are you focusing more on the talent, location? You kind of mentioned a couple of different locations. So like what is your strategy there?
Well, to keep it simple, one of the basic pieces of information that I got when I was new to Devy was draft wide receivers that were born in Florida, running backs that were born in Texas, quarterbacks that were born in California, and tight ends that went to Iowa. That's the easiest way to put it because there's something about the water in those places that produce a high level of talented players at those positions. But quite honestly, it's just I'm going to go to 247sports.com. I'm going to go to On3. I'm going to go to Rivals. I'm going to look at who's at the top list of each class. Then I'm going to go start diving into systems and stuff like that. So really, when it comes to age, I'm not going to invest heavily on seniors. If like in my Devy drafts, I'm just not really going to go down that route because the statistical data tells us that they don't have a high hit rate. So I'm not going to invest these lottery ticket picks in these players that, have a good chance of not hitting. So I'm going to try to target 5, and it's especially if it's a shallow draft, 5-star, 4-star players. I try to stay away from drafting Devy quarterbacks and Devy tight ends just because I've been hurt so many times and I don't want to invest into this. It's so tricky to hit on these guys, especially incoming freshman quarterbacks. Like I am done investing in incoming freshman quarterbacks.
I love it. So Chris, it seems like you've been playing Devy for a little bit now, and that you got into it, and like you speak passionately when you talk about it, so you love it or whatever. But I'm guessing, like, I feel like, I don't know, Jorge, does that make you like question anything? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, so I mean, a few things, because you're so passionate about it, and you know, it's no surprise to those who know you that you're just. I would assume this is your favorite form of fantasy football. Would you say it is over Dynasty and Redraft?
I would say it was, and then it went into Campus to Canton, and now my absolute love of fantasy football is the strictly college fantasy football.
Nice. So I want to have you have the opportunity to shout out some of your friends that may be watching or listening to the show, and just who are some people that got you interested in Devy to begin with, that you kind of owe thanks to, in general,
I'm gonna say Skip Newton. I don't know if he's really making content too much anymore, but 2018 he got me into my first Devy league. He was a making Devy content at the time with the Devy dashboard people. So he was a big influence onto me finding my love for Devy Fantasy Football. Quite honestly, outside of that, there was no one person in particular. I was just a lover of the college football game. And then when someone introduced me to the fact that, hey, you can take the college players, have a little taxi squad with them, and then they move up to your NFL. I just thought it was some of the coolest stuff. Because I did know, I mean, it's burned me so much because I think I'm too cute and I'm smarter than the room and I'm drafting all these guys that I shouldn't be drafting. That it absolutely burns me. That's where the love comes from Devy at college fantasy and C2C is just the joy I have when taking in the college football game.
Awesome. To piggyback off of that, so let's go back in time. You mentioned 2018.
Yes.
Wayne's World should always be referenced. I love it.
Anytime you can.
So you go back in time and you enter your league's chat or whatever you guys have to communicate with each other. You log into your app or your website that has your league settings and your roster, and you see how everything's constructed, and you're just like, all right, this is taking it to a whole other level. What would you recommend for somebody who may be new to Devy, that is either on the fence or is fully committed to playing, but just has no idea what to do in terms of scoring settings or roster builds and so on and so forth, like stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just keep it simple. 0.5 PPR. If you want to go 6-point passing TD, you can. Super flex. Make sure the Devy roster is small. And if you're in a Devy league with a bunch of new people that are getting into Devy fantasy football, make the first year of Devy picks untradeable. Because I've played in a couple leagues where there's teams where they year in and year out, they roster no Devy players. And I just don't understand why you're playing in a Devy league, because you're essentially not taking part in how the format is supposed to be played. So keep it simple, keep it small. You can keep the drafting of Devy players to just the incoming class if you want to do that, so you don't have to dive in to the year after or the freshman class. You can really slim it down and keep it simple like that. So say we have a draft, we have our startup draft, we draft our rookies, and then we have our Devy draft. It can be 2 rounds, 3 rounds. And we could say, I mean, it's a little tricky because guys may or may not declare for the NFL, so it might be a little tricky to get that done. But you can say, okay, no drafting 2026 class players. So no one's drafting the freshmen. And that way, the year after that as well, you can draft those players when the players above them move on. And so your Devy pool is a little bit richer. The one thing I found for Devy was that it does get a little trickier to rebuild. So you don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball and have a bunch of lottery ticket Devy players on your Devy pool, having a shite NFL team, but then those Devy players just never hitting for you. So you kind of want to stay competitive on the NFL side. If you're a middling team, you kind of don't want to commit to the full rebuild, selling off all your assets. So with that, if you're just getting into Devy, just keep it simple. Make sure everyone knows what's going on, and don't trade those first year Devy picks. They're gold. They're absolute gold.
You mentioned the rebuilding part being difficult, one of the most difficult aspects of it. And from what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you have options in terms of like which teams or conferences you allow players to be available. So would you say that if you selected basically all the conferences, it may be easier to rebuild from that sense, whereas you're just maybe selecting just the SEC or Big Ten, then you have a limited player pool that way?
Yes and no, because outside of maybe the Power 4, Power 5, if you want to put the Pac-2 in there, the hit, yeah, exactly. The hit rate on some of those other conferences isn't as great. So you can add those in there, but you might be only drafting potential, if you're going to put a value to them, you might be only drafting potential third or fourth round rookies at that point. So I try to draft players from programs that produce NFL talent. So like LSU, you're drafting an LSU wide receiver. LSU produces wide receivers at a high rate. Same with Ohio State. Ohio State produces wide receivers at a high rate, especially as of late. And they got probably one of the best ones in college football right now in Jeremiah Smith as a true freshman. So
yeah, I mean, so talking about the conferences that you can open up, in those conferences, they have divisions. And look at this perfect segue that the other Chris B just made where, Jamie in the chat just said, don't forget to tune in to Fantasy and Frames AFC South preview tonight. It's in 30 minutes, well, a little less than 30 minutes with that guy right there. Where is he? Yeah, that guy over there. Yeah. So, check them out. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe, review, comment, give us all the love that, you want. If you find some value in what is being said, and I can guarantee you something that those brilliant dudes on Fourth and Frames are going to say is going to, intrigue you. Maybe. We're hoping we're doing the same here on D365. So, Rich, I'm loving you. I'm loving your clerk's hat that you got going on. I can see the look in your eye that you're watching Chris and you just have like that twinkle and you just want to ask him something.
Seriously.
So go ahead and ask him, Rich. Don't wait any longer. Ask him right now.
Blinding me, the twinkle. It's blinding me.
Right. Well, you kind of touched on it already a little bit, but I mean, like, is there anything so I would be brand new to Devy myself, and say I came to you, what is like the one piece of, other than the don't trade away your assets and stuff like that right away and everything, like what's some advice that you'd give me coming out the gate if I was going into a Devy league?
In your startup draft, bypass wide receivers, bypass running backs early, secure your quarterbacks, secure your tight ends, because that is some of the hardest positions to rebuild from in Devy Fantasy Football, because all of the top names are most likely already drafted, and they're either going to be burnt assets or they're going to be valuable assets as they move on into the NFL. So just make sure that you secure those two positions early in your startup draft, and then you should be good. Should be good to go the rest of the way, man.
I love that, because that's how I like to build my dynasties.
Yeah, especially if it's super flex. Because look at this year. We don't have a tight end going in the first round of rookie drafts. We have a tight end going back end second round, maybe. Oh no, sorry, we have Brock Bowers. Sorry, my apologies.
And the
we have Brock Bowers. Yeah. So, but Ben Sinnott's not going in first round of rookie draft. So that's one tight end of the whole class going in the first round. This year, we got a little spoiled. 6 quarterbacks going in the first 15 picks of the NFL. So as a Devy player, you love that because either if you have an early draft pick, most likely Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., maybe JJ McCarthy are going to be in the rookie player pool, and you're going to be able to draft those guys. So as a rebuilder, you like that. But then you get the years of Kenny Pickett, where no one had Kenny Pickett on a Devy roster, and no other quarterbacks went in the first round. So you sometimes you get caught holding the bag with some of these quarterbacks. I have a lot of shares of FSU quarterback DJU only because of who he was as a freshman, who he was touted, and then he just completely fell apart. Cade Klubnik is another guy. Sam Howell was highly regarded as a Devy prospect. So draft quarterbacks, draft tight ends in your startup early.
See, you're talking about DJ Ungalale. He was the complete opposite of Spencer Rattler, and that showed QB. Yeah, like what was that? That special QB1 or whatever. You know,
yeah. Well, even
Spencer
Rattler was a high value Devy prospect, high value Devy target going in the first round of Devy drafts. Justin Ross, another guy going in the back end, middle of Devy drafts, non-existent. So it is a gamble. That's why you want to make sure you secure QBs, tight ends early.
I love it. And Jorge, because I don't want anybody to say I was playing favorites and, you know, like pointing out Rich having that gleam in his eye. I know you got a question to ask him right now.
So, I mean, it may be a shock to some that I'm a big fan of IDP Fantasy Football or individual defensive player fantasy football. Is there Devy IDP? Does that exist on top of everything else?
Absolutely, it does exist. I'm in a deep Devy Dynasty league that has the IDP aspect to it. I was in an IDP only Devy league, only lasted 2 seasons because I cleaned up both years and no one wanted to play with me anymore. But
Jorge wasn't in it.
Nice.
Yeah, but it does exist.
All right. Love it.
That is good. And Chris, I mean, I wanted them to go first just to seem like I wasn't, you know, desperate to ask you questions and everything. But I do have a question. You know, so you've talked a lot about these Devy things. So most people, they play on like the sleeper platform, ESPN, Yahoo, something like that. You don't really see a lot of Devy out there to the masses. So where can I go if I want to play Devy football, fantasy football, excuse me?
You can play Devy anywhere. There's only, I think MFL and Fantrax are the only 2 platforms that actually support the format. Like they'll let you see the college players on your roster. Whereas Sleeper, you either got to use placeholders. So some leagues we have kickers, then we put the nickname under the kickers to represent that player, or you run it on a Google sheet and then it just shows you have the Devy draft board there, you have the Devy rosters, and then as trades are made, you just go to the Google sheet and swap the players around. But yeah, you can play it anywhere, man.
Awesome. God bless Devy Fantasy Football commissioners because
yeah,
I was gonna say a little bit extra work, but it's got to be worth it.
Oh, you should try being a C2C commissioner.
Oh my God. Yeah. All right. So we're going to move, like we're going to get into like our next topic or whatever. We're still sticking with Devy, but we're going to get into more of the strategies and the team building and everything like that. So Chris, in a Devy startup, what would be your draft strategy? I know you touched on it a little bit, but let's say the 4 of us, we're starting a startup tonight. What's going to be your go-to?
Love it. Like I mentioned, man, QBs and tight ends early. Then I'm probably going to target high-end wide receivers. And then in Devy, I'd like to fade the running back position because there are a lot of them that slip through the cracks. So you can find some of these guys in the incoming draft. So I'll kind of just maybe draft older statesmen at the position. And then with my Devy picks, either because I don't draft quarterbacks or tight ends with my Devy picks, I will fill up my Devy roster with running backs and wide receivers.
Okay. I like it.
So let me piggyback off of what you said a little bit, ago. You tend to look at the players in the Power 4 or 5 conference, however we're calling it nowadays, just because those have a high success rate of translating to the pros. But are there any like smaller conferences? And I guess I don't want to like have you like give your secrets away totally, but like, are there any like smaller conferences or schools or whatnot that kind of have provided you like hidden gems here and there in your path to success here in playing Devy?
Like you can hit up the Sun Belt, you can hit up the Mountain West, and you'll find some players that'll be fruitful for you. Like a guy at UNLV this year that I absolutely love is wide receiver Ricky White. Not known to a lot of people, but last year had a massive year at UNLV. So he's a guy that I'm gonna target in my Devy drafts because I trust who he is. I watch him on tape. I love everything that he does. He's not in one of these big programs, but Ricky White is just a guy that I have fallen in like with.
Okay. I mean, I can't believe you didn't mention the Sun Belt. I mean, the Sun Belt's got those powerhouses, Liberty, Coastal Carolina. I mean, App State, aren't they in the Sun Belt also? I mean, these guys are...
you can hit up those spots, but again, they're not going to produce for you the type of talent that you want. So you really have to hone in on a player at these smaller programs, at these smaller conferences. Like I'm good taking a 5-star freshman from Alabama over a 1,400-yard producer out of Coastal Carolina, just because I trust what that 5-star is over that Coastal Carolina player, right? So,
yeah. I mean, Malik Willis, he was awesome at Liberty, right?
Yeah, Caden Salter this year. Caden Salter lit up the college game. Liberty went undefeated last year. Caden Salter is a top 5 pick in college fantasy drafts.
I mean, they didn't go undefeated. I count the bowl game. And that was
Kenny.
I don't know if you guys know what happened in that bowl game. Liberty didn't lose a game until they played Oregon in that bowl game. I mean, and Bo Nix, that's why he got drafted so early, because of Liberty. Like, what was it, 59-0 or something like that?
Yeah, Liberty got hammered. Yeah. I don't even think Salter was playing that game. Did Salter play that game?
I don't know if he did, but if he didn't, that's even more. Well, okay, all right, okay. Yeah, Salter, he was worth 61 points, so they would have been competitive.
Yeah, but hey, great college quarterback, not taking him in a Devy league.
Okay. I like it. Rich, anything you want to ask Chris right now?
I think honestly we've kind of hit it. We've been going back and forth with a lot of them. So no, I think that, I mean, there's a lot of things that I want to ask you, but I don't want you to spill your trade secrets all over us. You know, I want to give you at least let you have some of it. So once you're done with your show later on, I might hit you up. I'll be in your DMs.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I got rankings. Whatever you need. Yeah, whatever you need, brother.
All right. Hey, so I just say, if we start a fantasy and frames Devy league, Battistel's not invited. He can be the commissioner, but he's not allowed to play. How about that?
Come on, man.
Yeah, you're invited. I take that back. You're invited. You can run it. But
you're right.
No thanks.
Oh, no. Team Chris B. That's what it is. Yeah. We're going to start one. Team Chris B. We're together. All right, guys. So we're going to move on to our next topic. And Chris, like after this topic, we're going to get you out of here so you can prepare for your show. It's going to be rapid fire, but it's going to be the Devy edition. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about some Devy players that highly known for like the average person might have heard of. And you tell me what your thought of them. Are you buying, selling, avoiding, like whatever you want to say about them? All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And hello back to you, Mr. Scampers, before we get started. All right. So Chris, Arch Manning, quarterback, the 2026 class out of Texas. What says you on Mr. Manning?
Now, I know the whole show I've been saying, don't draft Devy QBs, don't draft Devy tight ends. If there's one Devy QB that I might invest in from this class, because Malachi Nelson transferred from USC to Boise State. Jackson Arnold looks great at OU, but I might, if I can get the value on it, I will buy Arch Manning. He looked great in the spring game. He looked great. I would not be surprised if he ends up starting sooner rather than later over Quinn Ewers.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Do you think he's going to take that job at some point? So we got that.
Possible.
It's possible. Hey, everything's possible. Anyhow.
Depends where Texas is, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, because Texas is in the SEC this year, right?
Texas is back, baby.
All right. All right. Next player, Travis Hunter, wide receiver / DB. of the 2025 class for Colorado Buffalo. How you feeling about him?
I love Travis Hunter, the player, as a Devy target. Where he's going, I think it's like top of the second round of strictly Devy drafts. I'm not going to touch him just because of the uncertainty of whether or not he's going to enter the NFL as a DB or he enters the NFL as a wide receiver. If you're not in an IDP league and he enters the NFL as a DB, then it's a burn asset. And I'd rather just not touch it.
Okay.
If I can get him at a value, though, like anybody else, I'm gonna pick him up.
All right. Let's see. Running back. Travion Henderson, 2025 class out of the Ohio State University. See, worth the leap. Oh, you're buying? Okay.
Yeah, buy. For me, he's fighting to be the number one running back in the class. He does everything so good. The way he catches balls, the way he hits the holes out of the backfield. I love what Travion Henderson can do. Now, he does have Quinshawn Judkins there as well, so he's going to have some competition to be that number one overall guy. But I'm buying Travion Henderson, and he's coming at a value this year as well.
Sure. All right. So we're going to talk about Evan Stewart, wide receiver, 2025 class out of Oregon.
Yeah,
thoughts on him?
Another guy I'm buying. I'm buying at Oregon. I love when he transferred to Oregon. Now, he might not be the number one wide receiver for the Ducks this year. That might go to Tez Johnson. He might end up being Dylan Gabriel's favorite target. But I am buying Evan Stewart as potentially a top 3 wide receiver in this class. And top 3 wide receiver in this class usually means a first round rookie pick. If you can get that value on Evan Stewart, you're buying it.
Okay. Is that passing volume gonna take a little dip without Knicks there this year?
No, man. I mean, Dylan Gabriel can sling the ball, man. So he can sling the ball probably just as good as Bo Nix. I mean, what he did at Oklahoma was impressive. Now he's in Dan Lanning's system at Oregon. He's going to have Tez Johnson. He's going to have Evan Stewart, 2 weapons that he didn't have at Oklahoma. I mean, I'm all for it. I think the passing volume is going to be there.
I absolutely love it. All right. And the last one we're going to ask you about before we let you get out of here so you can prepare for your show. Julian Sayin, quarterback. I don't even know if I said his name right. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I'm hilarious. Anyhow, he's one of the younger guys.
Yeah.
The 2027 class, quarterback out of Alabama. What you think?
Actually, Julian Sayin transferred to Ohio State.
Did he?
Transferred to Ohio State this year. And with that, I am not touching Julian Sayin because not only does he have Will Howard, Devin Brown, Lincoln Kineholz in that room this year, he's got Aaron Nolan, a fellow classman and highly rated quarterback as well in that room. And then next year, they got one of the best quarterbacks in the classes in Tavian St. Clair coming in. So Julian Sayin to me is an untouchable. I am not touching Julian Sayin, if you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, and you're saying a lot, and Julian ain't it. So
not for me. It's be a no for me.
All right, everybody. That is another episode of Dynasty 365. I thank everybody who's been watching and everybody who's been listening to us. We really appreciate you. Also, a major thanks to my CB brother, Chris Battistel, for dropping by and absolutely schooling us on all things Devy Fantasy. Chris, tell the people where they can find you and your work.
You can find me at FFChrisB on Twitter. Find my work at fantasyandframes.com. And we'll be on right after this with an AFC South preview with Colby Conway, me and Drew Scott. So make sure you hang around for that, man.
Yeah, absolutely hang around for that. These guys are great. They bring the heat. And as I said earlier in the show, you will get some type of value from the knowledge that they're going to be dropping. So check them out. Again, thank you for watching us on YouTube or wherever you're listening on your favorite podcast platforms. We appreciate you listening to us. Follow us on Twitter, Jorge the Amore. You can find him at Jorge B. Edwards. Rich the Animal Sickles. You can find him at Rich Sickles GBM, and you can find me at Dynasty Deviant. Make sure you visit the website, fantasyandframes.com. That's where you can find all the content that the talented crew of Fantasy and Frames drops on you to help you win those championships. Please subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you consume your favorite podcast. While you're there, if you would do me a favor and give us a like, subscribe, leave a review also. Tell Chris, Battistel that you really love when he says soft and silky things like, trade high. Anyhow, also hit that bell while you're there so you get notified whenever new content drops. Like all of the Fantasy and Frame shows, especially what's happening on Wednesday, we're Dynasty 365 for all your Dynasty needs. The Fourth and Frames guys, they got you covered for your redraft content. And then Shoot the Gap is hitting hard with that IDP content. So tune in Thursday for the Fantasy Football Weekly and the Draft Show. I appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's go from blue chip prospect to fantasy Hall of Fame champions. And let's just dominate those dynasty leagues. Good night, everybody.